Sup YouTube, Unlucky Tug here, bringing you a brand new video. It's a little different this time. It's not a thoughts on, it's a top 10 list. What? Wait, let me explain myself here.
Boo! You suck. Boo!
What the Zio? Seriously? How could you?
A top 10 list? Really? You've resorted to this? I thought you were better than this, Tug.
Hey, shut up, would you? Just give me a minute to... Wait a sec. You look different. Did you get a haircut?
Yeah, I did actually. Thank you for noticing.
No problem.
But still, you're a hack, and you should be ashamed of yourself. Top 10 lists are for clickbait YouTubers who are only in the game for revenue and—
Thank you, Zio. Now get out of here. No one asked for your input.
And nobody asked you for a top 10 video.
Would you get out of here? Okay, now if we're finished with all the interruptions, allow me to explain what this video is. Yes, this is a top 10 list, but don't worry, this won't become a thing on my channel. The future of the Unlucky Tug channel is not going to be clickbait top 10 videos. This is a special video I've had in the back of my mind for a while now, where I count down what I think are the very best episodes of the Thomas series, and talk about why these episodes in particular are so special to me personally. This is my own personal list, so of course it's going to be biased towards my opinion, and I'm sure you'd all have different choices than me. And there's nothing wrong with that, so I ask you all to just bear with me here. So without further ado, let's start this list off. Number 10. Toad's Bright Idea.
Are you kidding me? You have a CGI episode on this list? Of all the amazing episodes from the classic series, you chose a CGI episode for your top 10 list. Seriously?
Would you shut up, Zio? Yes, a CGI episode is in my top 10 list. Despite growing up and having an emotional attachment to the classic stuff, I can't deny that the current Thomas team are trying to bring new, original, experimental content to the table, and they definitely did here with Toad's Bright Idea. I'd like to call this episode revolutionary because of how experimental it is. They dared to actually write an episode that takes place within the events of a Thomas movie, featuring two characters you would never have thought would share the spotlight together, Gator and Toad. If you had told me Toad was going to share an episode with some random new character like 5 years ago, I'd have said you were mentally insane. But sure enough, this episode exists and it's just fantastic. It definitely fleshed out some character development that both Toad and Gator were severely lacking. It's experimental, it has a very unique cast, has a great soundtrack, it takes place at night, and the fact it's one of those rare animated episodes where Thomas is nowhere to be seen is just icing on the cake. Toad's Bright Idea is, in my opinion, the best episode to come out of the Brenner era so far, and has yet to be topped. I firmly believe it deserves a spot in my personal top 10. Number 9. Percy Takes the Plunge. I actually considered not including this episode on this list because it ultimately now is not a huge favorite of mine. However, it was a childhood favorite and it'd feel wrong not to include it here. As a kid, this was the episode I loved the most. I was always a big Percy fan because he had the best crashes, and out of all the crazy on-screen crashes he had in the series, for some reason the one where he rolls into the water was the one that stuck out the most. As a kid, I'd go outside all the time with my old Tomy trains, I'd make a puddle of water with the garden hose, and I'd reenact this episode. And I'm sure you're wondering, no, those Tomy trains did not last long. I think it was also a case that this was one of those episodes I never had on VHS until later in childhood. I remembered I could only see it via Shining Time Station, and would get really excited when the episode in which it featured was on. So excited that my mom actually had to record the episode onto a blank tape for me so I could watch it as I pleased. I'm not sure if that tape still exists or not, but I sure would love to find it. Overall, this episode holds a lot of fond childhood memories for me, and I think for that reason alone, it deserves a spot in this top 10 list. Number 8. Jack Jumps In and A Friend in Need. Okay, yeah, I'm cheating a bit since this is technically 2 episodes, but you know me, I love 2-parters. I've already expressed how much I love the pack episodes in its own separate thoughts on video, so I don't think I need to go super in depth here. The pack two-parter in season 6 was always so interesting to me just because it was solely focused on a group of all new characters. While I know these 2 episodes existed just to familiarize fans with the pack before the spin-off launched, to me, it just seemed like world building. I think I also love these episodes just because the Alec Baldwin dubs of them were so hard to come by at one point. It took so long for the official US dubs to surface that many people wondered if Baldwin had even narrated these episodes at all, myself included. Sure enough, when they finally did surface online years later, it was like watching the episodes for the first time all over again. Jack Jumps In and A Friend in Need are definitely 2 episodes that managed to stand out for me, and are some of my all-time personal favorites.
We're a cracking crew, laughed Kelly.
Number 7. Rusty to the Rescue. Rusty to the Rescue is a somewhat controversial episode, but let's be honest, only people who lack souls dislike Rusty to the Rescue. This was one of those episodes that wasn't afraid to go to dark, eerie places and utilize mature undertones. The shots of the scrapped engines alongside that quiet ambiance were always strikingly eerie and dark to me as a kid.
Oh, what's that? But it was only the sounds of the lonely scrapyard.
And looking back on it now as an adult, I just appreciate that the showrunners had the restraint not to pander to really young audiences like they did in the years that followed. SODOR takes place in the real world, and in the real world, steam engines get scrapped. Death does happen. These are the kind of messages and imagery that stick with you after childhood. Not crap like this. The music in this episode is some of Mike and Junior's best, as well as the direction by David Mitton. The music coupled alongside the night shots made for a real feeling of adventure. I've always loved that bridge set that crosses over to the other railway. It's one of those Thomas sets that has always stuck in my mind and makes me wish I could somehow replicate it with my own possessions. Rusty to the Rescue, despite massively changing Stepney's debut story into the show, is an amazing episode and one of my absolute favorites. Number 6. Thomas and the Jet Engine. This was an episode that came about in a time of the show where realism was still a huge factor of the series. And I've seen many people claim this is the worst episode of the classic era because of how unrealistic it is. My response to that? Who cares? This must sound really rich coming right after what I just praised Rusty to the Rescue for, but I say the show is allowed to be fun and crazy sometimes, so long as it's done tastefully, and Thomas and the Jet Engine is just that. It's fast-paced, it's thrilling, it's different, and is, in my opinion, the funniest episode of the classic era.
Want to race, Thomas? Beeped Bertie. Never mind.
How can no one laugh at that? I don't have much more to say about this episode other than I've always found it incredibly entertaining, and that the William Tell Overture is always welcome in the series. Chris Renshaw, take notes. Number 5. Cranky Bugs. I think every person on the planet knows the episode Cranky Bugs, just from the title alone. Cranky Bugs is a legendary episode because it's the first of so many great things. It's the first episode narrated by the very well-known Alec Baldwin, and boy oh boy did he deliver a show here.
Help! Called the engines from inside the shed. I can't! Called Cranky.
That is, still to this day, my favorite line of dialogue from the entire series. It also introduces one of the series' best original characters, Cranky the Crane. A character that is still used regularly to this day. And most of all, Cranky Bugs was the episode to kick off a really awesome season of Thomas the Tank Engine. This was the first new episode to air after Audrey's death in '97, and I want to say that played a huge factor in the direction Season 5 went. Instead of sticking to the original Railway series stories as a basis, the series went in a totally radical, awesome, action-packed direction that this season is now known for. And Cranky Bugs kicked all of that off. It's always been a personal favorite of mine, as is Cranky the Crane himself. For the first specifically non-Audrey character ever, he's a pretty great one the series simply couldn't be without now. Number 4. Grandpuff and Sleeping Beauty. Okay, yes, I'm cheating again, but how can you watch Grandpuff without watching Sleeping Beauty, or vice versa? These episodes make up one cohesive story, so in my mind, they can be placed together as one. And what else can I say? I love me them two-parters. What I love about the Grandpuff two-parter is just how grand scale it is. Much like Cranky Bugs did with Season 5, Grandpuff kicked off an amazing season of Thomas the Tank Engine. A season where the lush scenic settings were just as big a priority as the storytelling. Season 4 truly was a beautiful season, and hosts a number of personal favorites for me. I also put the Grandpuff saga so high on this list because of just how sad the story is, something that is rather exclusive to these episodes alone. It was another one of those really rare instances when the show went to a rather dark and sad place. The scenes of Duke's shed being buried alongside the heartstring pulling music really managed to strike a chord with me as a kid. Grandpuff ends on a rather grim, somewhat mature note, which is kind of incredible for a kids show aimed at little kids. And that's something I'll always praise it for. Number 3. Four Little Engines. Four Little Engines is a prime example of Season 4 at its absolute best. Taking a simple story with a good moral and making it seem bigger and atmospheric than it really is. The music, as always, is fantastic, and again showcases just another instance of how grand Season 4 was. What I love about this episode is that it's the only real story of the series to feature SKARLOEY and his true persona as the lead character. We didn't really see much of SKARLOEY's character in Seasons 5 and 6, and when they finally did something with him again in Season 7, he had already began his unfortunate transformation to a whiny, timid, scared child. Of all the characters they've messed up over the years, I'd say SKARLOEY got the worst of it. SKARLOEY is one of my absolute favorite characters in the show, and it makes me sad knowing that this was really the only episode in all 20 seasons of Thomas to feature him as the lead in his true colors. And while that is sad, it does make Four Little Engines a hell of a lot more exclusive.
Old engines can't pull trains like the young ones can. They can if they're mended, Old Faithful, smiled his driver. And that's what's going to happen to you. You deserve it.
Number 2. Ghost Train. Ghost Train, or Percy's Ghostly Trick as I know it, was the featured episode on one of my favorite VHS tapes as a kid. So obviously, this episode became a favorite of mine. Season 5 is definitely known now for its spooky episodes, some much spookier than this one. But when I was a little kid before Season 5 was even out, the spookiest episode of them all was Percy's Ghostly Trick. The music, the visuals, and the hauntingly echoed voices by George Carlin and Ringo Starr are so frightening that this episode is one that instantly sticks in my mind when I think of the old episodes. As I got older, this episode, as well as others like Four Little Engines, Grandpuff, Rusty to the Rescue, etc., were ones I really started to appreciate more with age. As a kid, I never thought twice about the production of the episodes, but now, that's all I can think about when I watch these. I watch Percy's Ghostly Trick now, and just wonder how frustrating it must have been to control the fog effects, and light the night scenes just right to give them that haunted, spooky feel. It must have been a real pain in the ass. There is something so timeless about episodes like these that modern Thomas just can't replicate. Percy's Ghostly Trick is one of the legendary episodes for the books, and one that is definitely a staple to be watched every year when Halloween time rolls around. And before I reveal the number 1 spot, let me mention some of the runner-ups that were very, very close to making the top 10. Thomas and Bertie, or as I know it, Thomas and Bertie's Great Race, is about as classic gets. Everyone who's ever watched Thomas remembers the episode where Thomas and the red bus race each other. It's something that they still push in the show today, and thank God they still do. It's an absolute classic, and I truly fought back and forth whether to include it in my top 10. The Flying Kipper. I think everyone would genuinely hate me if I didn't include this episode in the video in some way. The Flying Kipper is an uber fan favorite, and rightfully so. I absolutely love the music and the visuals in this one, both of which are totally exclusive to this episode alone. It's a true spectacle of the series, and was very close to making my top 10. Escape. An episode that everyone unitedly really loves, and I do too. There are times in the series when the engines really do feel like heroes, and Douglas definitely was one here. The heroic music coupled alongside the dramatically lit visuals make for a really thrilling adventure story. I love this episode, but it was just shy of making my top 10. Sir Topham Hatt's Holiday. As much as I love talking trains, it is nice to sometimes take a break from them and focus on the humans. It's also an episode that touches on pretty much all modes of transport on SODOR, whether it be trains, planes, boats, or automobiles. A particularly funny episode that I've always loved, and was just shy of making the top 10. Last Train for Christmas. Yep, another CGI episode that honestly was very close to making this list. It's undoubtedly a masterfully presented episode with its storytelling and direction, and is one of the very few animated eps that I think is on par with the classic era. It's the best Christmas-themed episode of the series without a doubt. Definitely one for the books, however did not make my top 10. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. I present you all with what I think is the very best episode of Thomas and Friends. The #1 spot on this list goes to Special Funnel. Special Funnel is one of those episodes that always stuck with me since childhood. In terms of a story, it's pretty basic. Peter Sam loses his funnel and gets a new one. Really simple, very point blank. There's a severe lack of dialogue from the characters in this too, as the majority of it is just the narrator talking. Nothing all that exciting happens in this episode either. No crashes, no runaways, no fast-paced anything. So why the fug is this the #1 spot above all the other exciting action-packed episodes I'd mentioned? The answer to that is the episode's atmosphere. Special Funnel is simply one of the most beautiful episodes of the entire series, if not the most. It's the only episode we see what winter looks like on the mountainous Season 4 narrow gauge sets. And Jesus Christ, they are just so breathtaking. Everything looks so cold and miserable, but at the same time, beautiful, quiet, and serene. This is also one of the first episodes to my memory that started utilizing heavy fog effects in the daytime. Now, for all of you who may or may not know, I'm a San Francisco native, Bay Area born and raised. And for those who aren't familiar with the area, San Francisco is known for its heavy, dense fog. The fog is so prevalent here that it has a name, Carl the Fog. I'm not joking, look it up. Winter is my favorite time of year, and I always get a certain feel of excitement when the heavy fog starts to roll in. There is nothing more beautiful than Golden Gate Park or Mount Sutro in the cold, foggy, gray weather, places I absolutely love visiting. When the fog rolls in, it turns the landscapes into something out of Lord of the Rings. It's one of the many beautiful touches that make me love the San Francisco area. Whenever I watched Special Funnel as a kid, and still to this day, it always gives me that same feeling. The wet, foggy woodland sets remind me so much of home. This beautiful episode manages to take me out of where I am and take me back home no matter where I am or what time of year I watch it. Many say that Season 4 was the most beautiful season of the show, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. I'd go as far to argue that Special Funnel is the most beautiful episode of the entire series. When it comes down to it, the beauty of the classic series is something that the new animated stuff just can't compete with. No matter how awesome the new animators try to make the sets, they just can't top the world that David Mitton and Britt Allcroft created. That's not to say the new directors haven't tried, of course. The teams at Arc and Nitrogen have created some really beautiful sets for the series. Arlesboro Harbor is the pinnacle of amazing CGI sets, I think. However, none of them unfortunately feel real. It all just looks like a really good-looking cartoon. All of Thomas's charm from the classic episodes came from the sets and direction that made the world feel real, and that's what made Thomas so popular in the first place. SODOR seemed like a real place kids could go to and actually meet the trains that talked. Times have sadly changed since then, but I can't fault the new team for at least trying. And whether you agree or disagree with me that the classic episodes are undoubtedly better than the new ones from the Brenner era, I know something that we all can unitedly agree on. That the episodes from the Sharon Miller era are all just terrible. So that's that. Those were my favorite episodes from Thomas and Friends. We all have our own personal favorites, and we shouldn't look down on each other just because of that. So, what's your favorite Thomas episode, Zio?
That's a toughie. But if I had to choose one, I think I'd go with Up, Up, and Away. I always found that episode really funny.
Your opinion is bad, and you should feel bad. So that's it, guys. I'd love to know what everyone else's favorite episodes are, so please post what your top 10 episodes of the series are in the comments below. It'll be interesting to see how everyone lists vary. Again, I want to give a massive thank you to all the amazing Thomas music creators out there that put together the themes I used in this video. You're all so talented, and I provided links to each contributor's channel below. Also, let me know if you liked this top 10 list format. I intended to only use it for this video, but if you all like it, maybe I'll try it again in the future. Let me know. Thanks again for watching my videos, guys, and have a wonderful day. Peace.